Question. How fun is formulating and formatting fundamentally, formidably unfun functions fit in a feature format?
Frustrating.
Frightful. I cannot see. Welcome to Breath of Life Development. I'm Josh Foreman, and today I am blending a little bit of my work-life world and my hobby world. Now, you may know me as your manic pixie dream boy, YouTuber extraordinaire, but by day I am a mild-mannered video game designer on a game called Blanco's Block Party. In Blanco's, you can build your own levels and play them with your friends, and honestly, this is just a career highlight for me. I am loving my job right now. It's so fun. I love the game. I love the build community that we've developed, meeting all these amazing creative builders who come into Blanco's and make these amazing levels that we all get to participate in together. It's a real joy. And so I'm so excited about my day job. It's seeping into my night thing. Part of that whole community aspect of getting to know the builders and getting their work into the game is facilitated by a character in the game named the Foreman. Because why not? He's in charge of building things. It makes sense he'd be the foreman. And then it was just a little too delicious that my name happens to be Josh Foreman, and I represent build mode to the players, and then there's this character in the game named the Foreman, and so one thing led to another, and he ended up looking like this.
Can I ask something about your game?
Sure.
Did you base your main character on yourself?
There is a lot of me in it. Maybe a little too much.
Not my doing, by the way. I should point out in the game industry, it's a little gauche to kind of like insert yourself into the game, but totally cool if your coworkers do it for you. So here I am. It's adorable. I love it. It was too great. I had to make one. I had to have one for myself. Quick note, this is a shorter, snappier version of my normal video. If you want to see the long, ponderous, educational one, I'm going to be putting that up on my Patreon. So for as little as $2 a month, you can have access to that. $2, pretty good deal. That's like, what, half a cup of coffee? That's like 3 sticks of gum, maybe 5 sticks of gum. I don't know, 1 romance novel, $2. And joining me today, my son Shane.
Oh!
Shane has become quite the musician over the years, or for the purposes of this video, musicians. Link in the doobly. He's gonna let you know when I've been funny. That was fun. Anyway, the process of building the Foreman can be broken down into 3 basic parts. First, there's the 3D printing. Second is the priming and sanding, and third is the final painting. Now, because I've done all of these steps on many arts before, I did not think I would have a problem with this. I thought this would be kind of a quick project, actually. Boy, was I wrong. You know the definition of ironic? Here's one. Let's say you're a YouTuber and you make a video admonishing creative people to research before they start a project. 3, we do some cursory research, books, articles, YouTube, and then just don't take that advice. It's like the 80s pop starlet Avril Lavigne saying, it's like Ray Yane on your spray painting day. It's good advice that you made in a YouTube video that you just don't take. Do you think maybe I should be a singer instead of an artist? So I thought I wouldn't need to do a bunch of research because I've done all these things before, but here is the bee in my bonnet. I've never done them in this very particular context, specifically clean, smooth factory finishes with like definition between colors and everything being like perfectly smooth. And that, oof. So I've done smooth things before, like this, right? Not often, but sometimes. But most of these things, I've actually made them to be kind of weathered and worn, so all the little chips and dings and flakes and stuff kind of make sense. Or I've done smooth stuff like this, where it's just like coated in gold. And so it doesn't require a bunch of very fine differences in color and stuff like that. And so it turns out I actually don't have experience making this kind of thing, specifically 2 or more colors on the same surface. That's where it gets tricky, because you have to have a precise line between these things. Yeah, turns out I didn't know the first thing about how to do this. Over 2 months of my free time, I went through this process of failing and recovering and failing, trying again. This was truly like the Dark Souls of art for me. So let's watch the pain, shall we? So the first thing I needed to do was to get a posed version of the model out of the game. So our animator Foreman was kind enough to give me a model. I took it into ZBrush and smoothed it all out. And then I prepped it in a program called a slicer. Now that takes the 3D model and turns it into thousands of individual black and white images, and that's what the printer uses to make all the layers. This is actually the first print that I'm doing on this new printer, so I wanted to start small, just a little test one to make sure I had the settings right, and I didn't. Yeah, eventually I got it, and then it was time to try a bigger one. And once I got that, I thought I would try it at a higher resolution. That means there are more little slicey images in there, which means you see fewer of the print lines. And it was better. It turned out pretty good. Then it's time to see how big can I go on this thing. And that's where I start messing things up. I've never printed anything this large. My first mistake was setting the print layers at a certain size, but not updating the slicer, so it got all stretched out. Now with this one, I ran out of resin halfway through. The vat only holds so much of this resin, and so you need to time the prints because they could take dozens of hours. So I needed to make sure that I wasn't asleep at a time when I need to refill the resin next time. And just when I thought I had it all worked out, I got a leak in the resin vat. So that meant I had to unscrew about 1 billion screws and change out this clear plastic thing, and then screw 1 million screws back in. But then we were back in business. And here we go, a really good successful print. There are definitely way too many supports, but I thought it'd be better to err on the side of safer rather than risk it breaking off at some point, so it's just gonna mean more cleaning up the print. Friends, are you tired of the global Illuminati stealing all of your rights and your freedoms and your dollar bills? Well, I have the solution for you. Invest in silver coins. These collectible coins commemorate the first Tales from Talifar book, which was co-written by Josh Foreman. The book and the coins are available on Amazon. Take it from me, folks. Owning one of these coins will keep you safe from the lizard people, from the Satanists, from the satanic lizard people. Hell, if I had to put my money on it, I'd say it'd even protect your kids from up to 30 to 50 feral hogs. So that gets us to phase 2, the filling, the sanding, priming, sanding, priming, sanding, priming, sanding, priming, sanding, priming, sanding, priming. I experimented with several different fillers. I think the one I ended up liking the most was Bondo. That's a filler that's usually used for car repairs, but it turned out pretty good. I should mention that even though I just finished building myself a spray booth, I didn't know if I could trust it with spray paint fumes, so I wanted to do the priming outside. But this was outside at the time. But after waiting for a few days, I got it done. Now on to the last and most deadly of steps. And this is the one that almost ended me. So my first thought was that I would airbrush the colors on because that would give me a nice smooth factory finish, right? Well, the inks that I had mostly just beaded up on the surface, leaving a very factory-like finish. Second, I thought Silly Putty would make a good masking material. I've used it before to pretty great effect, but the amount that I had to cover with it meant that I kept accidentally mushing it around, wrecking the clean lines between the colors. Third, I know that spray paint leaves a smooth finish, but masking the parts off would be a challenge. And it turns out that both these masking liquids I got also just want to bead up. And since they're clear, it's really hard to see if you've got complete coverage. And I did not. So, what about masking tape? And what I haven't been showing you is that between most of these setbacks, I was more or less sanding them back to the base. Since I was having such bad luck with masking techniques, I tried decanting the spray paint and applying it with a brush, and that ended up kind of looking like a lumpy disease. Which led to more sanding. Yeah, gosh, seems like there's going to be a lot of sanding. Shanes, would you mind making like a sanding song or something for me, please? Another problem I kept running into were weird little imperfections like wrinkles, discolorations, drips, and all that kind of stuff in the spray paint. And every time I ran into that, there's pretty much only one thing to do: more sanding. So you remember the little intro about the fundamentally unfun functions fit into a feature format? This right here, just sanding and priming and sanding and priming. Unfun. I thought I'd bring a little variety here. I'm going to go ahead and read out some of the stories that I've been writing for our $20 and up patrons. Every video, I release another short snippet of a story about them. Neil at Real Terrain Hobbies, who once reveled with the dwarves on misty mountains cold and dungeons deep and caverns old, but now has no memory of this place. Nevertheless, we press on, based on how little the air smells of fecal matter. Having stumbled into an epic tomb chamber for royalty, he examines the ruins. One of the hoblet in his parties got really thirsty and dove headfirst into a well. Sadly, there seemed to be no water, only leagues of vertical tunnel. Fortunately, the party had several backup hoblets. The remaining hoblets gathered around the well, listening intently to the echoing sounds as their compatriot ricocheted off the walls of the seemingly endless shaft. Grimby, the affable dwarf, patted them on the shoulders in consolation. "Look on the bright side, laddies. Since your friend was half the size of a human, he'll fall twice as far." That was a Scottish accent, in case you were wondering. Neil, the wise wizard's curiosity was piqued. The dwarf and the hoblets were gathered around the well, many crying. Turning to his stalwart Melf companion, legs lost, and by the way, it's Melf, M-E-L-F. You can tell that in writing. It doesn't sound so great when you say it out loud. And trust me, it's great. Turning to his stalwart Melf companion, legs lost, Neil pointed his staff at the group. "How many hoblets do you think it would take to jam up the well shaft?" Legs lost cocked a mischievous eyebrow. 46! It takes 46 hoblets to jam up the well shaft. Neil's tally was complete, and it was time to move on to more important matters. Legs lost gestured at the burial chamber walls. "'Tis only one way out, wise wizard." Neil was silent. His eyes squinted, seemingly staring into nothing. Grimby, the dwarf, piped up. "Oh, he's about to use his magic, he is." You'll have to tune into the next video to find out exactly what that magical spell Neil has cooking. And now, back to what's on the agenda here. Oh, good, more sanding. So, since I couldn't count on the liquid mask to make a perfect round shapes for these little areas here, the cheeks and such, I thought I'd add these with epoxy clay. And while I had it out, I figured, hey, if I sculpt the tattoo into clay, it'd be way easier to ink afterwards. Also, I discovered this stuff, which is a way better masking fluid. It still can't get perfectly smooth lines, but it got a lot closer. I also thought I'd try my hand painting with enamels on the spray can here, and it turned out pretty good. You can still see a little bit of brush strokes, but it's not terrible. After masking off the non-skin parts, I sprayed this super beautiful lacquer spray paint, but sanding it back on the hair, not so perfect. Turns out one of the primer coats didn't fully set, so there's just a layer of sludge under all that paint, which means more sanding. And at this point, I decided it was probably better just to strip all the paint and primer off and start completely over. But with the medium and the small heads, I kept going the other direction. I just wanted to see if I could ignore the problem and stick with spray paint. You can guess how that turned out.
Hold up. Is he still oh my god, he's still sanding. Okay, again.
A trick I learned from Luke Towan is to apply clear coat after you put your liquid mask on, because that will seep into the seams a little bit, and so your color will be blocked. Oh, and also make sure that you secure your tiny head before it falls and breaks. But that's nothing a little super glue and more sanding won't solve. So, at this point, I finally remembered my own advice. I did a little research, and I saw this technique for getting a smooth paint finish by hand simply by doing many very watery coats of acrylic paint. But I loved this spray paint, the color of this lacquer so much that I just kept the spray paint skin color, and then I tried to hand paint over that with the other colors. And it took 10 coats of yellow to cover the skin color here. I was still seeing some faint brush strokes, but then I realized that this new acrylic paint that I got could also be airbrushed, and that led to my final strategy. So I could use the masking to get the overlapping areas and airbrush the colors, then come in with a fine brush to clean up the edges where the two colors meet. So while the edges aren't actually like super pristine and perfect, they're pretty darn close. And at some point I just decided, you know what, this is close enough. And I had another crazy setback here. So I tested the clear coat. I decided to use a lacquer clear coat because of the skin color is using a lacquer spray paint. So just to be safe, I was gonna go with the lacquer clear coat. I tested it on my little, we decided to call him the Foreman, and the spray works fine. It's great. But then look at this. I spray it on the final pieces and I get these crazy wrinkles. Again, I think most of this problem traces back to the non-cured primer that I did not strip back on the body parts, and because it had been so long, I decided to just accept it. I lowered my quality standards. You know what? Close enough. It's fine. And then you know what? Once I put my signature here, you can barely notice. I hope someday that I will run into Dan Lish, who is the amazing designer of this character, so that he can sign it as well. That would be so cool. Eventually, I got there. Now, since I ended up making more than I originally planned, I ended up with 4 of these things. I've got an idea. I'm going to give away the very first one I printed, bootleg issue number 1. This little Foreman here. You could win it. All you got to do is subscribe to my mailing list. It's going to be in the link below. Check that out if you want to win Foreman number 1. The 2 medium ones, I think the best place they should go is to my 2 friends and coworkers who pushed to get the Foreman to end up looking like the Foreman. It's just so funny. It had to happen, and these guys pushed for it. So Charles Beecham and Rick Brown, our lead story guy and a producer, and they got it done. So each of them is going to get one of these medium-sized Foremans. The large one I've got to have to sit behind me when I do my streaming on my upstairs computer. So when I'm streaming ZBrush, Photoshop, playing Blankos and other games, I can have a beautiful little Foreman standing behind me. So thanks for sticking around, hearing me out, watching me go through this incredibly painful process. But you know what? I think sometimes people learn from that sort of thing. They get inspiration from the idea that you can just bash your face against a thing enough times and eventually break through to the other side. And maybe you'll even take away the lesson that I said in that video a year or so ago. You know, just do some research first. It's not that hard. Don't be me. Be that other Josh who gave you that good advice. Anyway, thank you to my patrons. You guys are amazing. Let's let my son Shane play us out with this incredible song that he wrote just for me in this video. Thanks a lot, Shane. Don't forget you can check out a bunch of his crazy music videos in the link below. Here we go, the Foreman.
1, 2, 3, Foreman. He was born a spray painter. His hair was forged out of gold. He has a knack for making things snap, and he puts towns on the map. Yeah, he's the Foreman. The Foreman. He's the Foreman. He's a Foreman. Man knows how to use a spray can.